So excited to have our great governors up here. We've got Governor Shapiro from Pennsylvania, Beshear from Kentucky, and then McMaster from South Carolina. And so I thought we would start maybe with you, Governor, and give us some thoughts about permitting reform and what's happening in Pennsylvania and how do you kind of look at that from your perspective.
Thank you, and thank you, Governor Stitt, for your leadership. Thanks for the nice shout out, and thank you for the great work you're doing in Oklahoma. I think you're pace setting for a lot of us, and we appreciate that. Let me just say it's an honor to be up here with my colleagues talking about an issue I know we think is so critically important and really transcends party lines. It's very common sense. We got to get to market more quickly, particularly I think when it comes to energy projects. In Pennsylvania, we're proud of our legacy as a national energy leader. We're the second largest net energy exporter in the country. And we've got a whole lot of history to back that up over time. We have found that one of the biggest issues that holds us back from doing even more in this space is permitting. And so that's why it's been a priority of mine in my first 2 years as governor to move quickly and get people on the job a whole lot faster. I've heard this consistently from businesses and organized labor alike, from communities that want to see transformation because their neighborhoods have oftentimes been left behind and want to see more opportunity. And so that is what we set our minds to begin working on immediately after taking office. We've taken a few concrete steps, and in the interest of time, I'll just tick them off real quick. Number one, in just my first week in office, I signed an executive order asking our bureaucracy in Pennsylvania to simply catalog every single permit, license, application that we issued. That had not been done before. We discovered a few things. Number one, we discovered we issued 3,400 different permits. And number two, we discovered that we were moving too damn slow across the board. And so we set out to change that. We then came back and followed up on that executive order with a time certain for each and every permit that the Commonwealth would issue. Governor Stitt did something similar in Oklahoma, and we backed it up with a money-back guarantee. So if we say it's going to take 14 days to get your permit, and we hit that 15th day, we will give you your money back. Now, I know a whole lot of folks in industry here, y'all don't want your money back. You want your permit. But the money-back guarantee is something that I think holds our bureaucracy accountable. Proud of the fact that in just the first year we've had this money-back guarantee in place, we've only had to issue 4 refunds for permits, and we issued thousands of permits each year. The second thing we did was acknowledge, and I think this is an issue for every governor, the complex projects that involve environmental permits tend to take too darn long. And so I signed legislation that was supported by both Democrats and Republicans. Last year, I was the only governor in the country with a divided legislature. I think now there's 2 or 3. So for me to get
I'd take it.
Yeah, you'll take it. For me to get any bill to my desk, I need support from both parties. So we signed the SPEED Act, which provides third-party review for complex environmental permits, and we're seeing things speed up there. And the third big thing we did was through executive order, something called a fast-track permitting process, where you would have total transparency on big, complex projects that have a ton of different permits, where folks could apply and follow their permit on a public-facing website, holding the bureaucracy and the company or industry accountable for making sure we have the information we need in order to process that permit quickly. We are seeing real results from this effort. Case in point, every business in Pennsylvania, whether you're a local barber shop or you're one of these huge multinational corporations, you need a business license in order to operate. The day I was sworn into office, it took 8 weeks to get a business license in Pennsylvania. Today, it takes just 2 days. The biggest thing that was holding up a lot of these projects were environmental permits. We have reduced the backlog of environmental permits in Pennsylvania by 85%. We have gotten rid of 2,000 permits that were part of a backlog, moving at the speed of business now in the Commonwealth. And we have a real-time permit tracker on our Department of Environmental Protection website, so there's total transparency on that process. I think it's making a difference when businesses are thinking about where they want to site and communities are thinking about the options they have. They know that, sure, we've got tax incentives and we've got great folks who are working on these projects, but we can also move a whole lot more quickly. And I think Republican and Democratic governors all understand that speed to market is so critical, especially in that energy space. The final piece I just want to mention is I recently came out with a broad-based energy plan in Pennsylvania, one that has brought together industry, environmental advocates, labor, and consumer groups. We named it the Lightning Plan, of course, after Ben Franklin, one of my predecessors. It's true, he did lead Pennsylvania many years ago. Pennsylvania is one of only 12 states without a board to review and approve large energy projects with a siting opportunity there at the state level. One of only 12 states that makes it harder to site these projects. This Lightning Plan would seek to fix that and bring Pennsylvania, I think, more into modern times and have a siting law on the books. So look, in Pennsylvania, we're working hard to create opportunity. We're working hard to get these projects to market a whole lot more quickly. We think these permit reforms are common sense and they are working. And in my administration, we live every single day by 3 letters, GSD. And since this is the official National Governors Association, I will just say that stands for Get Stuff Done. And that's the focus of our work. And I think permitting reform is a key component of that. So, Governor Stitt, thank you for making this a big part of your leadership of NGA. And it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague from another Commonwealth, the Commonwealth of Kentucky, Andy Beshear.
Well, thanks to Josh and thanks to the entire NGA for getting us together. Couldn't agree with Josh more about speed to market, how important that is for economic development. But I want to come at this from a different angle and one that's pretty personal to me right now. I didn't think I'd be here today. It started raining really hard on Saturday in Kentucky. And we ended up with one of the worst flooding events that we've seen. Sadly, not the worst. In 2022, we got hit even harder. After that, we had a snowstorm. And after that, we had bitterly cold temperatures the last couple days. We've lost 18 Kentuckians since Saturday, each one a child of God that is missed by their community and is absolutely irreplaceable. When we look at what we're doing to rebuild from each of these disasters, it takes a lot. In Appalachia, we're moving people from the valleys up on higher ground to on top of former coal mines. But you look at the time that it takes to get that done, even just to move people from a place that they are in danger to a place of safety, and the number of permits, even with a government going through and having to push through them, the process that it may take for CDBG DR funds and how long it takes to get them just isn't moving at the pace that my people desperately need it to. We've had 13 federally declared disasters in Kentucky since I've become governor. That's not fair to the people of any state. But we're strong, and many of you, including Governor Braun, have sent help in our most difficult times of need. When you think about permitting, understand that there is a human cost too when we're not moving fast enough. Thankfully, those that are impacted by this floods are going to be able to qualify for the higher ground communities that we have already been building, but we are in, year 1.5, trying to get this done, and we're finally, after running the water and the sewer and the power, going to see houses, neighborhoods, hopefully, all at the same time coming up. But making sure that we've got a system that is set up that can accommodate these really difficult moments, or in the very least, to create exceptions that don't exist when our people really need help, is something that we need to impact and to change. The other thing that we've got are so many programs that are sitting out there, like the BEAD program, which could be transformational in my state. Think about parts of Appalachia where it's so hard to have a 4-lane road, so we might not be able to put in the newest factory, but with high-speed internet, people can start their own businesses. So we've got a lot of infrastructure we're going to need to get permitted, even as a state, in the coming years. And to do that, both help on the permitting side, but we also need some answers from our federal government about what programs are and are not going to be there in the next couple years. And I think all of us, regardless of our party, need at least what that's going to look like as soon as possible, so we're not chasing permits on programs that might not be supported in the coming years. With that, I'll turn it over to Henry McMaster, my co-chair in one of our endeavors.
That's right. Thank you, Andy. I'm too happy to be here. And I got to say, I think we all saw a couple of things this morning that we never thought we would see. And one was one of us, Kay Ivey, governor of Alabama, asking the cabinet secretaries for their telephone numbers. And the second thing,
for their cell phone numbers.
Cell phone numbers. Second thing is they gave them to us.
Yeah.
So it is indeed a new day. And then when the president was talking, he said, call him too. Now, he did not give his phone number.
But if you've got it, I'll take it.
I got it, but I'm going to hold on to it. But it really is a new day, and I wish everybody could have been there to hear that. I think you got a little sampling of it, listening to Doug Burgum, Secretary of Interior. And yesterday we had a session with Doug and also Chris Wright, who's the new Secretary of Energy. And I think between those two people, we've got some opportunities ahead of us that are really remarkable. And with the president wanting everything done right now, and those two leaders in their positions, they're in exactly the right position, exactly right time, we really have a lot of opportunities. And the one thing that can slow us down is these regulations and permits and all that. We all used to getting permits. You got to get a permit to catch a fish, to drive a car, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't take that long, although we'd like that to be quicker too. Most of us have worked to get our Department of Motor Vehicles where you can get your license and that sort of thing pretty quickly. But to get a nuclear reactor permitted and up and running is the slowest thing in the entire world. And we can't afford that anymore. And I think we realize that we have got to have nuclear as a part of our arsenal. Everything we do, everything that everybody's talking about, everything takes electricity. In my state, we're about 60% nuclear. We like nuclear. We've had it for a long time. I think we're 23% or so gas, 19 or so percent coal, and now they're talking about a new kind of clean coal and all those sorts. And we have biomass, we have hydro, we have some solar. We don't have any wind, but we're for all of the above. But I think that most folks agree that we have to have a major nuclear component, or we're not going to be able to survive. Competition around the world is dangerous. All these systems are fragile. We got to be sure we have to protect them, and they have to be able to work. But I'm confident that the innovation is the key. I'm confident that the big AP1000s, they produce a lot of electricity, and people have come along now in the last few years. They want to restart 3 Mile Island. They want to restart. We were building 2 new reactors in one place. We have 7 in South Carolina. We're starting on 2 new ones and got about halfway through and had to quit for a variety of reasons, cost overruns. Georgia went ahead. I think they had one in the West Brian Kemp. They just finished 2 more, cost $30 billion, which is about twice as much as they thought. I don't know how long it took, but it took too long, and now they're starting on 2 more big ones. We know how to build the big ones. We don't have the small ones done yet, but we're going to need to do that. But remember this, the nuclear submarines, they've been floating around forever, and they go underwater they can stay under there for years, and they don't have these, they use a very concentrated, high-powered nuclear fuel. So there are different ways to make these things smaller. But I'm confident with the leadership that we have and the necessity that's facing us, we will be able to get this done. We'll be able, as Doug Burgum says, it will be clean, safe, and reliable. And if we just can get the bureaucracy out of the way, I think we'll be in grand shape. So this is the kind of brain accumulation. We got to learn to communicate, collaborate, and cooperate with each other. If we do that, I think now is the time. We see the need. We realize it's a dangerous world more so than ever. We got to have electricity for everything we do, and that's why this is very important.
Thank you, Governor.
Yes, sir.
Well, thanks everybody for your comments. I thought I'd open it up to our governors if there's any questions from them. Yeah, Governor Braun.
Thank you. It was interesting because when the last 6 years I've spent in the U.S. Senate, this entire conversation has been discussed, and it's changed a lot from when we first started it to the time I left. And the one thing I'd like to emphasize is when Secretary Burgum was talking about what our biggest geopolitical foe is doing, and that is building a coal-fired plant at least weekly, if not more, and cornering the renewable market, but energizing it with coal. And a place like Indiana, which processes permits quickly, Crossroads of America, it's got so many logistical advantages to it. And I could see it brewing over the last 2 years when there was a flat as a pancake demand for energy, electricity, until you get every new business, whether it's a chip factory, a battery factory, and especially these factories that are data centers. I asked the question in our own state about 6 months ago when if you remember, he said, these facilities, most of them require a gigawatt of electricity. So it struck me, what do we produce in Indiana? I thought that had to be at least 100 gigawatts if one facility could use one. We were only producing 20 gigawatts of electricity for all households and current businesses, just to put it in perspective. And then the other thing you find out is you need a lot of juice, you need a lot of water. Each one of them uses a ton of water. And that's where it gets to be really tricky. We're going to bring electric generation on stream, but it takes 3 to 4 years to convert a coal facility to a natural gas facility. In a state like ours, where we are about the 5th or 6th lowest cost per kilowatt, we're now halfway on the other side of the ledger because we've prematurely shut down our coal fleet. So it begs the question of, since we were in flat demand, how are we going to do it when your two most important resources have now gotten complicated? It gets back to the whole idea of permitting. I think some states won't have enough water to do some of it. You may not have the ability to generate the electricity, but we should with SMRs. I would like to hear the discussion among governors because it generally gets back to the federal government. I was there. It's like watching paint dry. Everything takes a long time to get done. I'd like to hear the 2 or 3 federal permitting issues that we contend with highlighted since we're here in DC. What are those significant log jams that we deal with the federal government?
Well, I'll jump in real quick here. You make a very interesting point, Governor, because I was also shocked with when the data centers are coming to our state, the 1 gigawatt of power, and then I don't know if you caught it, but Burgum was saying that the whole city of Denver uses 1 gigawatt. And so that's how massive these factories and how energy intensive they are. That's why we have such a demand on our grid. The other question I'll throw out to our panelists is behind the meter and then on the meter, because what we're finding in Oklahoma is we're in the Southwest Power Pool. Part of these projects are, transmission delays, but if a factory wants to be built today, do you have the ability in your states to build behind the meter? In other words, right there at the factory, maybe just a single source with backup power for the factory, and maybe they don't connect because you don't have to go through FERC, you don't have to go through all of the federal regulations if you're building behind the meter. So that's something Oklahoma's looking at. And then I think later on, because they're telling us it's going to be 5-6 years before you can get that slot to connect to the meter. So I think that's an important conversation that all of our states are having, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I'll just super quick, Governor Braun, I think you raise a really important issue. And in Pennsylvania, we actually have plenty of water and plenty of capacity to produce more energy. And so part of our biggest challenge is the federal bureaucracy. Another part of our unique challenge as a northeastern state is PJM, and both together, FERC and PJM have the ability to grind new generation to a halt. So we can be quick on our permitting, we can do incentives, whatever we need to do in the state, and then you get in a queue and you just sit and wait. I've had these conversations directly to PJM. In fact, I recently sued them in part over trying to get rates down and generation up. I've had really constructive dialogue with the new chair of FERC, who I think also understands the need to move more quickly. But I would say getting FERC to be more nimble, for those of us who deal with a compact like a PJM, having them understand the unique challenge set that data centers set for us, I think we need to answer those questions right now. And that's going to be something where we as governors collectively, working with our federal partners, I think can have the most impact as opposed to states going one-off trying to address these issues.
And I'd just add that we've got production, we've got transmission, and if we do it right, we'll have storage. The idea that at some points during the day or the night, if we're producing, you have to use it or it's lost in many parts of our grid nationwide. Certainly the battery storage technology, which is different than the EV technology, is coming. And the ability to be able to produce at times when people aren't using as much, store and then push it out on the grid, I think can help us do more with what we have while at the same time recognizing that we need more production. And I just say this is all a balance, and just about everything is. You have to make the math work for the demand that's out there and the supply, but also as we finance these new methods of production, people are going to want or only be able to finance what they believe can exist, a decade into the future. And so I think we've got to keep as much of our production online as we have right now, be more efficient with storage, but then look at, what we can build that will meet not just the regulations of last year, and maybe they change this year, but whatever they could be 10 years from now, that's the only type of group that's going to come together and put together the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to build these new facilities.
Yeah, one more thing on that. Governor Beshear mentioned storage. Well, that means batteries. And to have a storage battery, you got to have some critical minerals, and one of them is lithium. And the Chinese are trying to get all of it in the world. There's not much out there, but they are flooding the market. The prices have gone down. Some of the businesses that are trying to process it and dig it up or having a hard time getting along with the Chinese. That's another way that this is a very fragile thing, and we got to be very careful. But I don't know what other minerals are involved, but I know about lithium. And there are companies that are on the verge of going out of business now because they can't stay afloat because of the low price and flooding of the market.
Yes, Governor. Michelle.
My buddy Mark might have been first, but I'm just doing that to be polite. I'm going to go. I really appreciated Governor Braun's question and your answer, Vice Chair, which is we got to do more about transmission. It really is all of the above. New Mexico's got a very good model. We are fast-tracking transmission. SunZia, which took way too long, still took far less time than any other current transmission. And with our Renewable Energy Transmission Authority, we are on track to add 5 more transition projects that are much faster than anywhere. And it's because we've figured out a way to do better rights of way negotiations. And I think that our tool could be useful so that we really do have more state-federal partnerships. And certainly in the fast permitting or 40, we need it to include not just huge $200 million projects, but smaller ones. To your point, I think this is a really good time to highlight states' work, to think about ways how we can show the federal government that we can do it. And we're also producing right now legislation for transparency. So you can see this process because we believe, like the federal government does, that it motivates innovation. And that's exactly what we're experiencing in New Mexico. So I offer that up and appreciate that you talked about all of it.
Good, good.
Governor Stitt,
Please.
Excuse me, Mark. Is Mark next?
Yeah, Governor Gordon.
Well, thanks. And I always have to follow her anyway. That's the way she is. Quick question. One is liability on transmission. I'd be interested in what states are doing. That is really wounding a lot of new transmission projects and utilities, kind of changing the landscape a little bit. But the other thing, and I think, Kevin, you and I have talked about this a couple of times, and I'm interested in Josh's and Andy's and others' point of view. If we talked about a time certain, and you talked about that for the state, Josh, my sense is give the feds a reasonable time. Most of us have primacy on our environmental regulations. So the question I have is, if we don't see the federal government getting things done on time, can the state take that over? And of course, when you do that, then people say, well, the states can't afford the legal cases that are going to come. My point is compelling the federal government to stand behind the state's analysis so that they handle the lawsuits that are inevitably going to come. But my point is the incentive for the federal government to get the job done on time instead of dragging it on for several weeks might be a hell of a good way to get things moving.
Yeah. I would make the comment back to behind the meter. We've done a lot of research on this, and I think we could bypass a lot of the federal regulations, and that's what our new generating companies are talking about, is just, hey, forget the 7 years. I get it. We're all interconnected, every state sharing electricity, but we're going to just build for this one factory, and then later on, we'll go play Mother May I, get in line for 7 years. But I think that's a part of the solution, and that's what I'm encouraging investment in Oklahoma, is we need more electricity generation. If we do that, that's where the companies are going to flood to, because we're going to have it and the other states won't. And so then later on, you can interconnect. There's transmission issues, et cetera, et cetera. But I really think we have a federal administration that is looking and trying to streamline the permitting processes, just more back to common sense. Guys, this should not take this long. If you're telling us it takes a year for your environmental studies, we need to cut that down to 60 days, et cetera, because we're going to lose the advantage that we have, and we've talked about that with China. Everybody's bringing that up, and in the AI data centers, we don't want to lose our competitive advantage. And so one of the solutions might be just to bypass the federal regulation, and just as long as you're building in your state without that interconnectivity, I believe you can do that without playing Mother May I to the feds.
I think that's a great point. I'll add, while not sort of federal, it is a regional compact. I mean, we're asking ourselves that very question every day. If we're ready to go, we got our permits together, we got financing, why do we then go sit and wait in line at PJM, for example? And we're actively exploring Pennsylvania doing its own thing there, leaving PJM and seeing what we can do on our own, particularly as a net energy exporter. I think we have an ability to potentially do that. I endorse the comments that Governor Stitt made. I mean, I think that there is an attitude amongst all the governors here that we got to get this stuff moving more quickly. I hope that what we're hearing from the federal government is they want to do that as well. I hope that comes to fruition. And if it does, I think it could mark a new day for this country, both in terms of national security and economic opportunity, especially in communities like I have in Pennsylvania that have been historically left behind. I think there's one other piece of this where we have to think about what is the role of state government and federal government, and that is getting the energy into the markets that need it most. Governor Lamont and I have spoken about the fact that, as an example, we've got an abundance of natural gas. They need natural gas in New England. They need to get their prices down. How we build out the infrastructure to get it there, and how much of that we can negotiate state by state versus needing a federal partner to do that work, I think that's going to be a real central question that we're going to have to all grapple with, not over the next 10 years, but over the next several months. And that's a conversation we're really eager to have in Pennsylvania, and I know a lot of New England states are as well.
And while we're talking about energy primarily today, I think we all recognize the major infrastructure projects, especially the mega projects that many of us have been awarded grants for, also face these significant complications to where we announce it for our people. They're excited about it. It means these projects have been really necessary for a long time, and 2 years later, we haven't even broken ground. And as we're talking about major economic development, that takes the water, that takes the sewer, that takes the roads, that takes the bridges. And so trying to not just get our energy permitting sped up, but also especially these major projects that we can't start without the federal government saying okay because of the grants that have come. And this is through multiple administrations from multiple different parties. I think governors have seen that, and now's the time that maybe together we can do something about it.
Yeah, great point. I mean, Comcast, AT&T's, the internet that we're trying, the broadband all across our states for connectivity purposes also goes through similar types of permitting processes that we can't leave out of the conversation as well. So it's not just your energy conversation. It's a great point.
One thing on transmission innovation and the role of the feds versus the state. There are a lot of grants out there. We just won the 12 new technology and innovation hubs. We were one of 12 that's created. Now we've solely committed to power. And I think it's somewhere between 45 and $70 million a year for several years. There are a lot of those kind of things out there, and I think this administration is going to be quite willing to let the states lead the way with those type of innovations, and that's another area where we may be able to do a lot of good.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we're out of time, and join me in thanking our great governors for this great discussion.
Thank you. Thanks, Gov.
Thanks,
Good job.
Thank you.